Hey guys, Matt here. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, Swift cheating. Now, I'm not going to talk about sandbagging, and I'm not going to talk about those guys that through either naivety or ignorance or willful ignorance have their settings incorrect, their power meter calibrated incorrectly. No, I'm not going to talk about those guys. Um, what I'm going to talk about today is what I call, or what we call, pure cheating. So I'm talking about guys on Swift who are riding around at pro watts, but they're not fucking pros. So I've been riding on Zwift. I actually checked this because I thought it wasn't quite as long as I thought, but I started in 2016, which is crazy. Um, for the last 4 years, have been racing the A category. Um, I don't race Zwift the same way a lot of people I know race Zwift, in a sense that I don't race Zwift as an end in itself. I'm not an indoor specialist. My focus is still outdoor riding, and I use Zwift for training. But I've done a hell of a lot of Swiss races, something like 1,500. And over time, I've seen Swift change significantly. So when I first got on the platform, 2016, 2017, I saw fast guys riding around. And when I say riding around, I'm like cruising, if they're solo, on a solo attack, thresholdy type efforts. Maybe not all out, but definitely high sweet spot. So guys are right around 4 watts a kilo. And that was pretty consistent through 2016, 2017, and probably into 2018. Around 2019, started seeing 5 watts a kilo. And then in pandemic times, things changed quite a bit. I started seeing 6 watts a kilo. Now, I've been following pro cycling for about 30 years, and I've been racing off and on for 25 years. I used to be an elite racer. I used to be a Cat 1. Used to travel all over North America doing races. I've got a friend who went world tour. I know quite a few pros. I've done a bit of coaching. So I know what watts are. 6 watts a kilo, that's Tadej Pogacar. That's Chris Froome in his peak. They're not doing 6 watts a kilo all the time. They're doing it in the Tour de France. They're doing it for max half an hour, 35 minutes. And it's the upper echelon of the sport. Most pros, you might be surprised, I'm talking World Tour pros, if they're a ruler, TT guy, a little bit heavier, 75, 80 kilos, their FTP is 5.5 watts a kilo. Now, the absolute value might be high, it's 400, 420, 440, but they're not doing 6 watts a kilo. So when you see 6 watts a kilo on Swift, and I think this is where we have kind of a problem, because a lot of guys are sort of come onto Swift platform and maybe they haven't raced outside, maybe whatever, they new to power meters, but they see guys riding around at 5 watts, 6 watts a kilo, and they think it's upper echelon, but totally doable. Now, there's probably 200, 300 guys in the whole world that can ride around for half an hour at 6 watts a kilo. So when you're seeing it all the time on Swift, what you're seeing is fake. It's not real. Now, I'm probably going to get some shit from this. Fine. There's always exceptions to every rule. Now, when Ed Laverack is riding around on Zwift at 6 watts a kilo, well, Ed Laverack is one of the best climbers in the UK. He's an ex-professional cyclist. He has real world comms on big name climbs. Like I checked, and I think he's in top 15, 20 on Alpe d'Huez. And I'm not talking about guys that, you know, are elite amateurs who are winning races. I'm not necessarily talking about those guys. Some of those guys probably can do close to 6 on their best day. But I do see 6 watts a kilo all the freaking time on Zwift. And the other thing I see all the time is those guys do it every freaking race. And it just doesn't sit with me. But those guys aside, you know, guys that actually have outside results or outside pedigree, and there are the occasional freak shows who, genetic freaks who, you know, I think this guy Andrew Feather.
This is Andrew Feather. He's one of the best humans on the planet at riding bikes uphill.
It's a good example. The guy's a lawyer. I think he's in his mid-late 30s. The guy can fucking climb, right? He's a 6 watts a kilo guy. And he's just, you know, he works full time. But he's a genetic freak. And believe me, the genetic freaks, most of them are fucking in the world tour. You gotta ask yourself, some dude, he's 40 years old, got a full-time job, he's riding 10 hours a week max, and he's riding on Zwift, and he's putting out big numbers, and he's got absolutely no outside pedigree at all. Do I think some of those guys exist? Maybe. Do I think they're ubiquitous? Fuck no. Fuck no. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. And maybe, you know, it'll be clear that what I'm not talking about. So, I raced a guy last week, right? And he's just riding around like it was an A category race. It was a longer race. I think we were out ride for an hour and a half to, 70K race or something. And he took off. And at the end of the Zwift race, I looked at his power, and I think he did 340 something watts or something. It's close to 5 watts a kilo. I think he's around 70 kilos, something like that. Heart rate, 144, 146, I don't know. Upper zone 2, right? Cruising. So let me show you how you try and verify that, right? So the guy dual records and fuck off, right? Because I don't fucking believe you, right? And this is another issue. Guys dual record and then, I don't know how they're dual recording and lining all that stuff up and still not being able to perform outside, but whatever. So let me show you how you can figure out one way to figure out whether this guy is legit or not, other than the fact that he's putting out pro watts and he's not a fucking pro. Here's what I do. Okay, so you go to Strava, and this guy, so fucking arrogant, he's got an open Strava, right? Oh, I'm an open book. So you go find a comm, right? So I found this guy's comm, and I tried to find something, typically I look for 5-minute comms, or I'll look for 20-minute comms, right? Look for his VO2 power, or look for his FTP power, right? It's 20 watt max power. So I go find it, and yeah, this guy's got a lot of comms, and okay, dude, you did pretty good. You got that comm, 70 guys. But look at you, buddy. You did 308 watts. And oh, look, your heart rate was 169. right? But I just raced you on Zwift and you did 340 watts at a heart rate of 144. Dude, you're not fucking pro. And you're not pro on Strava because stupid you fucked up. You showed you actually had your power meter calibrated correctly. And you can do 300 watts, right? Which for a 44-year-old dude is pretty fucking good, as I'd expect. But you're not fucking pro. But on Zwift, you are pro. Pro to the extent that I think you're ranked in the top 20 on Zwift. And people call you legit. And so this is really problematic because when a guy is dual recording and when a guy is totally fronting that, hey bro, I'm legit, and you go and check and you can see that he's fucking full of shit because he's got no fucking outside results at all, and the only place he can put that power out is on Zwift. You only really have one conclusion, and I've struggled to think of another way, and that conclusion is he's fucking cheating and he's manipulating his power sources so that he's reading 50, 60 watts high. So that's one way you can find a Zwift cheater. Now a lot of guys, and these are the guys I'm not really talking about. Like, so you'll see guys riding around 6 watts a kilo. And you'll go check Strava, and he's not on Strava, or it's a block Strava or whatever. And then he's got like a fucking anime character for his Zwift avatar. I'm not talking about those guys. Those guys are cartoon characters. They're fucking around. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about these guys that are racing the Zwift Premier League or on teams, and they're putting out pro watts, and they're just complete fucking fakes. And this goes back to what I was talking about before with the normalization of this stuff on Zwift. I think I listened to the Trainer Road podcast one time, and they were talking about the average FTP of their customers. So these are guys that are subscribed to Trainer Road, a cycling app where your sole purpose is because you want to get fitter. So we're not talking about average Joes. We're talking about guys that race bikes for the most part. And I'm pretty sure they said that their average FTP on their platform was 3.1 watts a kilo. 3.1. Now, 3.1 on Zwift that's D category, right? I mean, that's fucking hopeless, right? Sorry if you're a 3.1 guy, but you know what I'm saying, right? Guys on Zwift, there's been like this arms race. Like there's this normalization of 5 watts is sort of the standard for A. For A, the standard for Premier League is you're cruising 5.5, 6, right? And so this has sort of become the normalization of it. And so I think people are doing what they can to try and achieve these false standards, because honestly, guys that can consistently ride 5+ watts a kilo, and you can go look at the Coogan chart or whatever.
I mean hoe as in garden hoe, not as in you looking at my hoe.
They're fucking not just pros, they're probably World Tour guys, right? The average pro, I think World Tour guy, they're LT1, right? So their lactate threshold, first lactate threshold, right? So that's the aerobic threshold, not the anaerobic threshold. This is lower. This is when you're still using primarily slow twitch muscles, right? Where your lactate is just starting to, be above couch level, right? That's where Tadej Pogacar can do 300 watts all day at a lactate level of, 1.5 or whatever. So most pros, their LT1, that's their all-day pace, is 4.1 watts a kilo, right? That's fucking hard, right? So literally you're riding around for 6 hours at 300 watts, whatever, for these guys. 280 for, a very light climber. I see that every fucking day on Zwift, right? Just cruising at 4, cruising at 5. And when it gets hard, I'm fucking climbing for a 20-minute climb up the Zwift, whatever. I'm doing that at 6 watts a kilo. And I put it to you that there is like a couple hundred guys in the world that can fucking do that consistently. And somehow they're all on fucking Zwift, right? So you see what I'm getting at, right? There's this normalization on Zwift that people who don't have the context of how incredibly performative 6 watts a kilo is, thinking it's normal and thinking I gotta be there. And so I think that leads to a lot of the weight doping, a lot of the manipulation of power meters, and like I said, this escalation of what the platform first was when people first started riding around, which I think was probably mostly legitimate, to what it is now, where there has been, a more, how do you want to say it, professionalization of Zwift. And sure, there's good bike riders on Zwift. I will never contest that. But there's a lot of guys on Zwift who have zero results. Zero. Nothing in their Palomars at all, if they even ride outside. And they are competing with your Ed Lavraks and, whoever else is up there on Zwift. I do have a slight skepticism with some of the stuff I do see on Zwift, some of the, the elite races. And I know it gets confusing because mixed in with that are the guys I'm talking about, which are complete fakes versus the guys that are good bike racers. And it's sometimes hard to, is your power meter out 20, 30 watts? But you kind of know, but you're kind of going with it, versus complete fucking cheating where you're manipulating your fucking, your power at source. And by the way, I don't know exactly how they're doing that. And maybe that's a topic for another video. But based on, when I go look on Strava, and again, let me just repeat, when I look at these guys who I'm suspicious of, I would say 9 times out of 10, my conclusion from doing a bit of research, looking at what they've done on Zwift Power versus what they've done outside, versus, things like VAM, things like putting into bike calculator and doing the estimation of the watts for that climb, that's also very eye-opening, right? And I'll do a video on that too. When I check, I said 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, I don't think you did the watts, dude. I don't think you did the watts, right? And so it's a problem. It's a fucking problem. So what do we do about it? I've come to this sort of point in, and that's kind of the irony of me doing this video, I'm kind of the point that I don't really care, right? I don't care. I tend not to race those guys. I race friends of mine most of the time. Or I race, like I said, just for training. But I think the point of this video is just to get across to some of the people who, and I see it all the time, I'll be in a group ride and there's guys I know are just fucking full of shit. They're full of shit. Just riding around 5 watts a kilo. And everybody's like, oh dude, you're so strong. And they're sort of idolizing this guy a little bit, putting him on a pedestal. And I'll go look him up and go, this guy is a fucking fake. There's no fucking way, dude. Like, he doesn't even look like an athlete. He looks like some fucking Joe, Fred, like he's dumpy and you know, he's got nothing outside, and if one or two things he's done outside, like he's fucking failed miserably.
I'm a nerd on a bike. Yeah, I do what I like. You can't hold me back because I'm a nerd on a bike.
Have a healthy skepticism to what you see. Have a bit of a grain of salt. If a guy is a nobody but puts out pro watts, and even if he puts out really, really good watts, not just pro watts, but you know, he'd be a Cat 1 racer, you know, in real life. And you can't find any context for his numbers, right? And it, you know, dual recording is great, but I think the guys that are professional cheaters have figured out a way to get around this stuff. So they do record, but both power meters are fucking off. But if you got a guy who's, you know, you just raced and he just put out fucking 5 watts a kilo, heart rate 145, you know, and you go on there's no fucking dual recording. You go on Strava, block Strava, right? Not on open Strava. That's always a big tell. And he got no context for his numbers. I think it's totally acceptable to say, if you gonna put out extraordinary numbers, you kind of gotta have, if I can quote Lance, extraordinary proof, right? You gotta have some context for the numbers you're putting out. If you don't dual record, but you're a 5 watt a kilo guy, dude, you gotta fucking dual record. And you gotta show some context that you can do this shit outside. Okay, so that went longer than I thought. I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found it. I didn't want to come across as a dick or an asshole about these guys. There are some legitimately great bike racers on Zwift. There are. I think there's less than what we see. And I think it's important that we make the distinction. You know, it was interesting a couple of years ago during pandemics, there was a lot of World Tour pros on Zwift. They were getting their ass kicked. That was both hilarious and fucking wrong, right? And we could talk about why that happened, and there is a bit of subtlety to it. It's not purely the fact that everybody was cheating, but I think it's a significant portion of why those guys are getting their ass kicked. Yeah, okay, sure. A lot of them did know how to ride Zwift, but it's not that fucking hard, right? So, on that note, thanks very much for watching. I'm going to do a few more of these videos if people are interested in it. I'd like to do a little bit on sort of weight doping. I'd like to do a little bit more on guys with high power, both on and off Zwift, and how you deal with that, how you look at that, because those guys are still fake. And I want to show you how you can figure out how they're fake, what tools you can use to look at that. And yeah, if you guys have any topics you want me to talk about, you know, like I said, I'm a student of cycling, I'm a student of Zwift. I think it is a good tool. In some cases, it's a great tool, but it is just a tool. And so I do have trouble taking Zwift racing too seriously, particularly elite racing too seriously. It's entertaining. I don't know how much of what I'm seeing is real, in the sense that I don't know how well it translates to racing outside. And I still think we should be focused on real world racing, right? I think we're still humans in the world. We should be giving that sport its due reverence, if I can use that word. Okay, so that's it for me. Yeah, thanks for watching.